someone who wasn't getting over you. When I move to the side, when I move across.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's reading of To Be a Slave, a Puffin Modern Classic, a Newbery Honor Book written by Julius Lester. I am Keisha Noor, your narrator for today. We were planning to complete the reading of this book at the end of February, which will be the end of Black History Month. We are in a leap year, so February will have 29 days instead of 28. But we have decided history, especially Black history, should not be rushed. So we will read this book as long as it take. We will have the discussions as long as it take, because our intent is to start the conversation that no one likes to have. The conversation about the oppression, the genocide, and the systematic injustices that have occurred and to this day, which we are in 2024, are still occurring. We must have the conversation that no one wants to have in order to be sure that we too can stand as other people can stand with their ancestors. The Jews can say never again, and they're standing against what happened to their ancestors through the Holocaust. I feel African Americans need to say never again to stand against the injustices that happened to their ancestors. It is a brutal and harmful truth that no one likes to really acknowledge or discuss. But the United States government knew it was a story that occurred and needed to be documented. So at the Library of Congress, you can go and do the research through the Federal Writers Project to understand firsthand what actual slaves, felt and thought and experienced during their time of slavery. This project started not long after the proclamation. Is it the Emancipation of Proclamation or Proclamation of Emancipation? But we just sum it up by saying when the order was given that all slaves were free. But if you've been paying attention to this particular recording, that call happened long before the slaves were actually freed. Long before there was documented statement that, hey, we will no longer participate in the transatlantic slave trade, but for some reason, the slaves were not made free. It's almost as if the United States said, hey, we're not going to allow to bring any more slaves in because we have enough here. And we have certain locations where we breed slaves so we can create the slaves that we need. We can have the supply that will never end. And in 2024, it's very unfortunate that the slave trade continues through the prison systems. There's a continuous injustice against Americans of all races, but especially Black Americans that are tried and found guilty for crimes that they are not guilty of. And then after they've served 20 or 40 years and they've continuously fought to have people realize I'm innocent, the government decides to give them a check. And sometimes the people are happy with that check, but I'm glad to know that someone said, hey, this is not enough for the time that you have taken from me, for the years of free labor that you have received from me, for making me serve time as a guilty man for a crime that I was clearly innocent from. I firmly believe that racism on any level should not exist. Everyone has the opportunity to stand up and not be racist, not say racist things, to not discriminate against anyone. But unfortunately, there is not any one particular race, nationality, sexual orientation, anything that falls within those demographics that they can be discriminated against, it should not exist. So I do these readings to bring attention to what happened to my ancestors. But I also want to bring awareness that racism on any level from any group should not exist and it should not be tolerated. This is a moment in time. We are in 2024 that we should all be able to walk together, live together, elevate together, and make Earth a better place to be, no matter where you may reside. Whether you are in Africa, India, Asia, South America, North America, Antarctica, one of the islands, it does not matter. Racism should not exist. So, with that, I thank you for your engagement. I thank you for sharing. I thank you for saving. I thank you for commenting. I thank you for your engagement. But most of all, I thank you for viewing and standing with me to stand against racism. We are now on page 95 in chapter 4 of To Be a Slave. This chapter is on, and it's a very long chapter, it's on the resistance of slavery. And I hope you all enjoy the images that are part of today's reading that were created by me, Keisha Noir. And once again, we thank you for subscribing, for sharing, for liking, for saving, for commenting. And that is all considered engaging in our content as we attempt to raise the vibration of all humans, but especially of the African American community, so that we can create new communities that other communities admire, that want to come and be a part of our awesome community. Because we came and we come from generations and generations and generations of great people that do great things in great ways. And it is all to ensure everyone can live a great life. Despite Henson's skillful management of the plantation, the owner dissipated the profits and eventually found himself in the position where all of his slaves were going to be auctioned off to pay his debts. He came to Henson and asked him to take all the slaves to Kentucky, where he had a brother. He would follow in a few months. It was remarkable that a white slave owner would ask a black slave to be responsible for other slaves on a journey of 1,000 miles. It was even more remarkable that Henson discharged the responsibility. My heart was aroused in view of the importance of my responsibility, and heart and soul, I became identified with my master's project of running off his Negroes. But a crisis developed while going down the Ohio River. On passing along the Ohio shore, we were repeatedly told by persons conversing with us that we were no longer slaves but free men. If we choose to be so, at Cincinnati especially, crowds of colored people gathered round us and insisted on our remaining with them. They told us we were fools to think of going on and surrendering ourselves up to a new owner. That now we could be our own masters and put ourselves out of all reach of pursuit. I saw the people under me were getting much excited. Divided counsels and signs of insubordination began to manifest themselves. I began too to feel my own resolution given away. Freedom had ever been an object of my ambition, though no other means of obtaining it had occurred to me but purchasing myself. I had never dreamed of running away. I had a sentiment of honor on the subject. The duties of the slave to his master as appointed over him in the Lord, I had ever heard urged by ministers and religious men. It seemed like outright stealing. Strange as it may seem, I really felt it then. Entrancing as the ideal was that the coast was clear for a run for freedom, that I might liberate my companions, might carry off my wife and children, and someday own a house and land and be no longer despised and abused. Still, my notions of right were against it. I had promised my master to take his property to Kentucky and deposit it with his brother Amos. Pride, too, came in to confirm me. I had undertaken a great thing. My vanity had been flattered all along the road by hearing myself praised. I thought it would be a feather in my cap to carry it through thoroughly, and had often painted the scene in my imagination of the final surrender of my charge to Master Amos, and the immense admiration and respect with which he would regard me. Under the influence of these impressions and seeing that the allurements of the crowd were producing a manifest effect, I sternly assumed the captain and ordered the boat to be pushed off into the stream. A shower of curses followed me from the shore, but the negroes under me, accustomed to obey, and alas, too degraded and ignorant of the advantages of liberty to know what they were forfeiting, offered no resistance to my command. Henson, pages 50 to 52. So I want to just go back and spend a moment dissecting this particular paragraph because it says, on passing along the Ohio shore, we were repeatedly told by persons conversing with us that we were no longer slaves but free men, if we chose to be so. Now, recall how I stated Kentucky was a slave state, Ohio was a free state, and separating the two states was the Ohio River. And clearly, we could see that these slaves were passing along the Ohio shore, and people were telling them, hey, if you choose to be free, come here. So, on the other side of freedom was slavery, which was on the Kentucky shore. On the Ohio shore, it was freedom. And it was crowds of colored people gathering around, insisting that the slaves remain with them to know what freedom was. They told them that you would be a fool to surrender yourself to a new owner when you can surrender yourself to yourself and be free. We are here to help you. And I'm paraphrasing my understanding of what that moment would have been like. We are here, my brothers and my sisters. We are here to help you. Come here to the Ohio shore and be free, opposed to going to the Kentucky shore and remaining enslaved. And they saw the people and they got excited. And divided counsels and signs of insubordination began to manifest themselves. That means that people that were on the boat said, I choose freedom. But you had the person leading the boat saying, I choose to do that which I agreed to do because my word is my bond. This particular person has now taken on the mentality of what will it be like if? And when I say what will it be like if, that is that moment in time when you think to yourself, freedom is here, but I so much prefer to have the admiration of my old master by completing the task he had given me to give delivery of me and all that are with me to his brother Amos to continue enslavement in Kentucky. That feather in my hat, that notch in my belt, that honor, that admiration, the pride, that I will feel is more valuable to me in this moment than giving freedom not only to me, but to all that are with me. That will not give me a sense of pride the way completing a task given to me by my slave master. That sense of pride is the one that I reach for. Let's take a moment to understand that at this moment, there's an enslavement of the mind. Our intent through this reading is to help anyone that needs to recognize that they are now enslaved within their mind, and it does not matter what nationality you are from, what your religious beliefs are. It does not matter what your race is. The only thing matters at this moment in this reading is I want you to connect with your mind. What is your current mindset? Do you currently have a mindset of limited beliefs? Or do you currently have a mindset of growth? In this moment, this particular paragraph that I have read, it clearly shows that the person that was in charge was operating from a limited mindset, not from a mindset of growth. A limited mindset says, there's no way I can be free. There's no way I can disregard what I said I would do and disappoint my master who owned me as a slave. There's no way that I can tell my master I'm going to do one thing and I in turn do something completely different. I have been trained and equipped from generation to generation over decades and centuries to know that the mindset that the first slaves had, that I am a king, I am a queen, I can do anything, I come from royalty, that has now been broken down through the whips and the chains and the defeat of the slaves to now know that we must do what master has told us to do or we may not live. During slavery, individuals experience both limited and growth mindsets, reflecting the challenging circumstances that they faced. A limited mindset could manifest in slaves feeling trapped, hopeless, and believing their destinies were predetermined by their circumstances. But by the same token, with a growth mindset, they sought ways to improve their situations, often through education, resistance, and community support. These individuals believed in their capacity for learning and development despite adversity. The limited mindset was enforced by systematic oppression, but instances of the growth mindset emerged through acts of resistance, learning, and the pursuit of freedom. Recognizing and fostering a growth mindset was crucial for those seeking to overcome the confines of slavery and pave the way for future generations. So, as we think about this with this one chapter, just this one chapter we're dissecting, and I'm sorry, not even a chapter, one paragraph within a very long chapter that we are dissecting, I can see now, even in 2024, how the limited mindset and the growth mindset of the slave is still evolving. It has not taken rest as it should, it is still evolving. When we look at the limited mindset of some people, and put whatever race, nationality, whatever you choose to put there, but we know that my whole purpose and intent is to help raise the vibration of the Black community so we can again create a community that other communities admired and desired to be a part of. If we look at the limited mindset is looking at the lack that is here and saying, I can never have more because this is all I have. The limited mindset is saying, I dropped out of high school because I needed to work to provide for my family for whatever reason may be that you dropped out. But on the same side of that, you had someone that was in that same environment and said, I choose to have a growth mindset because my mind is telling me there's more to life than what I'm currently dealing with. There's more to life than what I'm currently living in. The growth mindset said, although I'm stuck and not enough, I know that there's a land of overflow that is promised to me through what my ancestors have overcome and endured. That growth mindset said, although I want to drop out of high school, I must make it work with what I have so I can get to higher education, so I can obtain what is needed to elevate not only me, but also my family. The limited mindset says, I know that the rent is due tomorrow, and my rent is $1,200. And currently, I have $1,300. The growth mindset says rent is due tomorrow. The rent is $1,200. I have $1,300. I'm going to pay my $1,200 rent, and I'm going to stretch the additional $100 I have. The limited mindset says rent is $1,200, and that gives me an extra $100. But these shoes that I want cost $200. So what I'm going to do is buy the shoes, and I'll short the rent by $100, and I'll ask my landlord to work with me for the $100 that is still due. So then you, in sense, have enslaved yourself in your mind to now, instead of being the lead, you have now become the tail. Not the head, you are the tail. Instead of being the lender, you are now the borrower because you need to borrow $100 from your landlord to give you more time to pay the $100. And with that $100 loan or time extension comes a late fee. And now instead of you paying the $100 that you initially had, you now owe another $150. The growth mindset has said, I've paid the rent. I have $100 left. What else do I need to do? All of the other bills are paid. I need to buy some groceries to be sure I can stretch out through the month. So now I need to figure out what type of food can I get to stretch out through the month. And when I look at my ancestors, they would say, you know what? We're going to get some rice. We're going to get some potatoes. We're going to get some beans. We're going to get some things that can stretch. And we may not have a whole lot of meat, but we'll get some meat and put it in there some kind of way. We'll get some smoked neck bones. We'll get some smoked pigtails. We might even have some chitlins. But we have what we need. So now we've taken them, we've bought our groceries. And let's just say everything that we purchased was only $40. We now have $60 left. The growth mindset says, I have $60 left. I'm going to hold on to this $60 because I don't know what else is going to happen. But if an investment comes along the way that will allow me to make this money more, I need to research to decide, do I partake in this investment? The limited mindset says, okay, I have my shoes. I paid the rent. Instead of paying the $100, I now need to pay the $150. Oh my, what am I going to eat? And the limited mindset is now going over to the growth mindset's house and saying, did you cook today? And the growth mindset is saying, yes, let me fix you a plate because I have more than enough to share. Although the growth mindset has made preparation for the month, they're still willing to share what they have prepared, because they know if push comes to shove, I have $60 remaining if I need to go and buy more victuals. That's a old school word for food. I need to go buy more beans or more rice, but based on what I purchased, I have more than enough to not only feed my house, but if my neighbor needs a plate, or the elderly woman up the street, or the elderly man up the street, or maybe that homeless person that I pass by every day. One day, maybe I'm going to bless them with a plate. The person with the growth mindset, they not only look for ways to grow them, they look for ways to grow people around them. They look for ways to grow their community. They look for great ways to grow their immediate family. They look for ways to grow their friends. The limited mindset looks for ways to grow them, but not in a way that the growth mindset looks, but they look in a way of how can I get over again? What can I do now that I'm in lack, but I have these really great shoes that I'm going to walk around in? And everybody's going to think that I got some money, but I'm really trying to figure out who can help me carry on the illusion that I have it all together. And they lean upon the person with the growth mindset. And the person with the growth mindset, they're okay with that, because their goal is to elevate and uplift and edify those around them in their community, because they know based on what their ancestors went through that that's not the road they want to travel. So they're looking for a way out, and they decided I'm going to stay in school to get this high school diploma. And I may not go to college, but at least I finished something that is very minimal that my ancestors were not given the privilege to do. All of my ancestors during slavery couldn't read. All of my ancestors during slavery couldn't comprehend. All of my ancestors during slavery could not write. All of my ancestors during slavery could not count. All of my ancestors during slavery did not have money. And it's okay if I continue to live in lack as they did and just enjoy what I feel is going to make me feel good for today, instead of putting off feeling good for today and feeling good today based on what I plan to accomplish tomorrow. That's a whole word right there by itself. So in this chapter, it said divided counsels and signs of insubordination began to manifest themselves. I began to feel my own resolution given away, which means they start to say, well, wait a minute, if I can go over and just touch freedom, then maybe I too can have the things I've always desired to have. And maybe I need to put my pride to the side of doing what the master assigned me to do and put me and my people first and go for freedom and figure it out from there. It said freedom had ever been an object of my ambition, though no other means of obtaining it had occurred to me but purchasing myself. That simply means I felt the only way for me to obtain freedom was to purchase freedom from my master. And if I carry out this task, then maybe my new master will allow me to purchase my freedom. Although I may be taking those within my community back into slavery, when right here I have the opportunity to deliver them to freedom myself. I am dependent on someone else to give us the freedom that I can now provide in this moment. What do you do? What do you do when freedom from whatever it may be is looking at you in the face? And the people on the side of freedom are saying, come over here. Come over here. We got you. We're going to help you. Come over here. And then in your mind, you're saying, but I told Master I was going to do this for him. I promised Master I was going to carry this out. And even within this paragraph, it said, I had never dreamed of running away. I had a sentiment of honor on the subject. The duties of the slave to his master as appointed over him in the Lord. Landlord. Landlord. Notice the two different stories that I told within this paragraph. You have the person that has $1,300 and a landlord, and you have a person that has $1,300, but they decided to pay the rent and not owe the landlord. They decided to purchase what was needed with what was left over and to save. The person that decided to have the man mindset to the person that's appointed over him in the Lord decided maybe they'll let me pay them $1,100 so I can buy these shoes for $200. And the landlord agreed. But in the agreement, the landlord obtained an additional $50. You, as the tenant or the slave to the landlord, obtained a pair of shoes. The person that decided to have a growth mindset paid the landlord, purchased the food that was needed for the month, was able to feed you during the month, and had $60 remaining that was saved up looking for an investment opportunity. Notice the difference between a limited mindset and a growth mindset? Let's keep dissecting this chapter. I had ever heard urged by ministers and religious men. It seemed like outright stealing. So the man in the pulpit has helped you decide what was right. There was no reading and understanding for thyself to rightly divide the truth. You took the word of the person in the pulpit, the minister, to say, you know what? God made you a slave for a reason. So you be a good slave and do exactly what your slave master said to do. Entrancing as the idea was that the coast was clear for a run for freedom, that I might liberate my companions, might carry off my wife and children, and someday own a house and land and be no longer despised and abused. Still, my notions of right were against it. The limited mindset says, I'm okay with enduring abuse. The limited mindset will say, based upon what the minister said, if they did it to Jesus Christ, why should I not go through it too? The growth mindset says, Jesus went through it, so I do not have to go through it again. When he died on the cross, he said it was finished, which meant I was able to live my wildest dreams in abundance with a positive mindset, knowing that all things worketh for the good for those that love the Lord. Well, can you really say being abused is working towards your good? Can you really say being held captive and unable to use your mind is working together for the good? Right now, what has come into me, it comes to the part of the Bible where Joseph helped the king by interpreting his dream. Now remember, Joseph had the coat of many colors that his father gave him. And this is where in the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, Joseph was the son of Jacob, and Jacob had many sons, but Joseph was the one that had the coat of many colors. I feel like we're coming home with this. His brothers were jealous of him, and they decided to sell him into slavery. But although Joseph was sold into slavery, he still had his gifts. Joseph in slavery was not required to give up his mind. His mind was able to still be used so that he could rightly divide the truth to know which way was God directing him to go. I think many of us keep looking for someone in the pulpit to direct us because we do not have the connection with God to trust and believe that there is a higher power and a higher source that lives within us that leads and guides us. You ever start to do something and just something in you say, don't do that? And you ever start to do something and you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that. That's something that's a little bit too much for you to do it in yourself. That's God saying, do it. I got you covered. When you can look at it and see that it's beneficial for everybody and it harms no one, that's God. That's God. When you look at it, you can say, okay, this person might get hurt and that person might get hurt, but I'm going to come out blessed on the end. That's not God. That's ego. And a lot of people do not understand how they end up in karmic cycles. It's because they keep choosing pride and ego over the higher power, the higher self that's calling them to do something great. So in this particular chapter, they realized they could liberate not only themselves, but everyone that was with them. That was God saying, I put here before you freedom. Which will you choose? And their pride seeped in. It says, I had promised my master to take his property to Kentucky and deposit it with his brother Amos. So it's leaning on, this is what I told my master I was going to do. So I can understand, okay, but this next sentence helps me connect to ego seeped in, which let's call the ego the devil. The devil seeped in and changed the mind of what God desired for them to do to pride and ego seeping in. Pride too came in to confirm me. I had undertaken a great thing. My vanity had been flattered all along the road by hearing myself praised. I thought it would be a feather in my cap to carry it through thoroughly, and had often painted the scene in my imagination of the final surrender of my charge to Master Amos, and the immense admiration and respect with which he would regard me. That was pride seeping in, but that was also a limited mindset seeping in. So let's go back to Joseph, and he had the coat of many colors. And Joseph ended up being used greatly by Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt. So Pharaoh had two troubling dreams, and Joseph, who was known for his ability to interpret dreams, was summoned because Joseph was still using his gift, although he was held captive. And people recognized Joseph's gifts, including one of the guards. And the guard is the one that told the king, hey, we have this prisoner, and he knows how to decipher dreams. So, from the guard being used to give the message to Pharaoh that God has put someone in the midst of you to help you, Pharaoh summoned Joseph, who had the ability to interpret dreams. And when Joseph interpreted the dream, he told Pharaoh, your dreams are foretold 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Why is it in this moment on on February 3rd, 2024, why is God having me use this chapter and connecting it to Joseph? 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. Why is it? And see, this is how my mind works because I have a growth mindset. Why is it that I gave the example of a limited mindset of someone having enough to do what they needed to do, but deciding to do something that would fulfill their selfish ego and now being indebted to someone else? And then they need to go to the person with a growth mindset to feed them because they chose to feed their ego instead of feeding themselves and their family. Why is it that it some kind of way took me to Joseph that's in the first book of Genesis, which is the 41st book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, to bring about that, wait a minute, Joseph interpreted a dream for Pharaoh to tell Pharaoh, hey, you're going to have 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. And because Pharaoh was so impressed with the wisdom of Joseph, he appointed him a high ranking official. And that illustrated how Joseph's talents and insights played a crucial role in the leadership of Egypt during a time of crisis. Why is it when I'm reading this paragraph, I'm saying, why didn't this particular slave? Because God can do anything. But for whatever reason, this particular slave did not have the insight to say, my people will honor me because I took them to freedom instead of delivering them into slavery again. That in itself will bring me more pride and joy than if I was to deliver them to be enslaved again and to be despised and abused. Why did this particular person not have that mindset? I'll tell you why. Because during slavery, the goal was to limit the mindset, which was a growth mindset in the beginning. But through the abuse of slavery, a limited mindset had now been drilled into the minds of slaves. That the goal is to please master and do whatever master asks, because that's what the Bible says. But remember, they could not read, so they had to trust the word of the ministers in the pulpits. Recall we read where a slave was going to die and he wanted to know, what will heaven be like for me? And the minister could not confirm for him, you'll be free. Because if he confirmed for him that he'll be free in heaven, the question then became, why am I not free on earth? So this person thought more of a feather in the cap than they thought of freeing their brethren. They thought more of fulfilling the charge given by the master and delivering to the brother, which will be the new master, than they thought of their people. They thought more of the immense admiration and respect and regard that the new master and the old master would give them than they thought of the admiration and the regard that their people would provide them. And it says, under the influence of these impressions and seeing that the allurements of the crowd were producing a manifest effect, I sternly assumed the captain and ordered the boat to be pushed off into the stream. They were right there at freedom, but for some reason, the captain of the ship said, we're going back to being slaves. God has given us what we prayed for all these years, and here we are at the freedom that we talked about, that we prayed about, that we dreamed of. But because my pride is saying, do what master said, do, we're going to go over here and continue being the slaves that we were called to be, because that's the story that was being preached by the minister in the pulpits. A shower of curses followed me from the shore, but the Negroes under me, accustomed to obey, accustomed to obey, accustomed to obey, which means they shared the same limited mindset. And alas, too degraded, and ignorant of the advantages of liberty to know what they were forfeiting, offered no resistance to my command. So that tells me that the person that was the captain knew what freedom was. The person that was captain knew that I can buy my freedom. But the person that knew what freedom was and that they could buy their freedom never shared the knowledge with those that were with them. Come on, Holy Ghost. I am sharing the knowledge that is within me with the intent to bring a growth mindset and freedom to others that do not understand. You too can be free. But first, you must renew your mind. Instead of wanting the $200 shoes, pay your bills. Instead of wanting to borrow and take from other people because you are in lack, start becoming the person that does not need because you are not in lack. But now you can join that person that is trying to go to the next level, and the two of you can rise together. So let's give a scenario to bring this all in. The person that paid the the $1,200 rent had $100 left, about $40 worth of groceries to feed their family throughout the whole month and be able to help those around them that were in lack as well, that needed food, had $60 left. That $60 was, if anything comes up, I got $60 over here I can pull from. Then you have the person, that's a growth mindset. You have the person with the limited mindset that said, okay, I'm going to pay the landlord $1,100 based on the agreement. And now instead of owing the $100, I owe them $150. I'm going to take the $200 that I now have and go buy these really nice pair of shoes. And I'm going to walk around for everybody to feel like and think that I got it all together and I got a lot of money. But I'm actually walking around in debt. And the person that is doing what they need to do, and they don't necessarily need the $200 pair of shoes, they now have $60 and they can help people out. So they have given me a plate. And I don't know that they have that $60. But guess what? Oh my God, I forgot to pay the light bill and the light bill is $20. Let me go over here and ask the person that gave me the food because I didn't put up food to eat for me and my family. Let me see if they got $20 so I can pay this light bill so me and my family can have lights. And this person has such a growth mindset. They said, you know what? I got $60. I'm going to loan you $20. When can you pay me back? So they loan you the $20 based on the payback period. So now they only have $40 to do whatever they need to do if something comes up. And guess what? All of a sudden they loaned you the $20, you got your lights, and they feeding you through the month because you don't have any food. So they got their $40, and all of a sudden someone comes to them with the same growth mindset, and they said, look, I found this piece of land over here, and the people want $100 for the land, but I only have $50. Do you have $50 to go in with me so we can have the $100 and we'll be co-owners? I'll own 50% of the land and you'll own 50%. It's only 1 acre now. It's only 1 acre of land. But that means you'll own a half acre and I'll have a half acre. And we'll own some land. And that person with the growth mindset is saying, oh, I just loaned so-and-so $20. And I had it, but now I only have 40. And the person that has their 50 is saying, you have 40. Okay, me and you gonna find somebody else that has 10 and we gonna get this land. But because they have $10, we can't necessarily do a 50-50 split. We got to figure out how to split it. I'm saying all of this to say, we want to help people so bad. But in this time, in this season, do not cast your pearls before swine. I'm saying that to say, do not help people that refuse to help themselves. When somebody comes and asks you to borrow some money, find out what did they do with their money. Because if you find out they're wasting their money and you loaning them your money, they're not going to pay you the $20 back when they're supposed to. And when your opportunity of your blessing that you've been praying for and waiting for comes, unfortunately, you will not be able to participate on the level that God intended you to participate. We're going to wrap this up. Notice that Joseph gave the word to Pharaoh. 7 years of plenty will be followed by 7 years of famine. My people, my people, my people. This is the time for you to go and gather up, to have what you need to have. So when the 7 years of famine comes, you are prepared. I want you to start learning, and I'm getting chill bumps as I'm saying this. Start learning how to can, start learning how to garden, start learning how to use the barter system. And I don't know if this is prophetic, but I am saying this is a time that the Black community must come together to build a community that other communities admire and want to be a part of. Not a community that they want to come and take. Because currently, gentrification is a community that was built that other communities look and see. They don't realize the value that they're sitting on. And because they don't understand the value, and I do, I will not tell them the value. I will come in and purchase it based upon what the value is that they are valuing it at. And I am going to improve it to the value that it actually has. Come on, Holy Ghost. It is time to buy land. It is time to buy property. If you are living in a neighborhood and your neighborhood is ran down, it is time to figure out, how can I improve this community? How can I purchase the property in this community? How can I uplift this community? Do I need to open a corner store and offer fresh fruits and vegetables? Shout out to Georgia, because I seen a community store just opened. Community store just opened. And when I was growing up, we had community stores. You could walk down to the corner store and get your gallon of milk. You could get your fresh fruit and vegetables. You could get your smoked meats. You could get your cookies and your candy. You could get it all at the corner store that was owned by somebody in the community. But for some reason, the Black community failed to realize the value of the corner store. And most corner stores are now no longer owned by Black people in the Black community. The Black community is no longer owned by the Black community. What happened? A limited mindset and pride of life seeped in. And instead of trying to have a growth mindset, we started feeling like, as long as I look like money, it don't matter if ain't no money in the bank. As long as I look like money, it don't matter if I don't own nothing. As long as I look like money, it don't matter if I'm living in lack. As long as I look like money, it don't matter what nobody else say. I'm going to need you to get your life all the way together and realize it matters. It matters. It matters. Because what you don't see is you are not helping to elevate your community. You are potentially help bring your community down. I'm going to end it right there, because there's so many other things that I can say. But I honestly feel at this moment that your higher self is talking to yourself and is saying, when will you get your life together? Thank you all for joining. This was today's reading of To Be a Slave, a Newbery Honor Book, written by Julius Lester, a Puffin Modern Classic, narrated by Keisha Noir. And we will read this book and dissect this book for as long as necessary, because the goal, the purpose, and the intent is to help people get their life together, to eliminate limiting beliefs by creating a positive mindset and a life of abundance. That has been my goal since day one. And although it may seem like I'm continuously pivoting, the pivot is the purpose to bring the promise. I like that. The pivot is the purpose to bring the promise. And the promise that I'm looking for is for the Black community to become the community that we know we can be. A community of royalty, a community of abundance, a community that other communities come and look at and desire to be a part of. a community that other communities join forces with, and where we all become this melting pot of a community that people across the world looks at and smiles. No matter what you do in life, always remember to keep manifesting. This is Keisha Noir signing off. And until next Saturday at 2:22 p.m., keep manifesting.
I was there when I needed someone who wasn't getting over you.